Hello, and welcome back to Tidbit of Torah. Rejection hurts. I remember the first job that I applied for after college, I didn't get. They chose someone else. I was working at a summer camp where I'd worked for several summers, and I applied to be their year-round staff director. And I was rejected. And it felt like such a personal sting because I had put so much time into this camp, several summers. I was on the interview committee. I was a part of the senior summer staff. And they chose someone that didn't have as much experience, but in retrospect, was a better fit for what they were looking for in the position. And I asked the camp director after I was rejected for the position if he could share some feedback to me about why I wasn't chosen. And it was such an eye-opening growth experience for me to learn about the reasons why they hadn't chosen me. And in retrospect, it ended up really informing who I became. And of course, later became a camp director and a rabbi. But I wasn't, in retrospect, quite ready for the position at the time. We've all experienced rejection, either professionally or personally, either once or many times in our lives. And it is always difficult. And so somehow reading this week's Torah portion, Parshat Vayeitze, when we read about the rejection of the character Leah, it somehow feels familiar, I think, to all of us. Here's what happens. Jacob falls in love with Leah's younger sister, Rachel, and it almost seeming like repetition of his life as a child, which of course his parents, particularly his mother, Rebecca, chooses him as the younger child to get the blessing from her husband, Isaac. And Jacob's father-in-law, Laban, does a similar deception and ends up having Jacob lie with and marry Leah first, when in reality the Torah tells us that Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, and even says that Leah was hated. God feels compassionate towards Leah. And so God opens up her womb, and while Rachel is barren, Leah is able to have children, and it's only later in which Rachel is able to overcome her barrenness. And so we see this sense of rejection that Leah feels because she is the unloved one. She is not in the same loving relationship with Jacob that her sister Rachel is. And we see it also preserved in her name. Her name, Leah, means weary or impatient. There's a sense of weariness that's manifested in her name and also her physicality. As she becomes older, her eyes become weak. Rakot can also mean beautiful, but it's interpreted as being a weakness. And there's a real sensory experience around Leah that's a struggle through the eyes and the ears in order to figure out her place and her legacy in this world. But we end up seeing is even though Leah is not the loved wife of Jacob, she ends up playing a very important role through her children and through her status. Just think about how many people are named Leah or Leah in this world, how she is invoked as a matriarch, and how she becomes so prominent in our tradition. We learn from experiences of rejection, like I had the one from camp, that sometimes we are focused on one area in our life, and a rejection causes us to pivot and focus on another area. When I didn't get that job at this secular camp, I went and became a day school teacher. And for 7 years, I worked as a day school teacher. And that experience opened up another door to me, to the rabbinate. I eventually became a camp director, worked for synagogues and other organizations, and I'm now in a congregation as my work. And I really don't think I would have become a rabbi if I had taken that first camp staff director job. We can view rejection as a personal focus on our essence, Or we can use it as a learning experience with our children and with ourselves and other people in our lives as an opportunity to learn about who we are as a photograph in this moment and who we want to become. What are our growth edges and who are we meant to be and how we are meant to serve. It's not always easy, and it often doesn't take away the sting of rejection. But I think the legacy of Leah for us is that even when we are not meant to be in relationship with a particular person or organization at a particular time, it doesn't mean that we aren't worthy and strong and capable of great perspective, great wisdom, great legacy. And we see that with the wonderful, complicated, at times sad, but at the same time very empowering story of our matriarch, Leah. Shabbat Shalom, and my hope for all of us is that we have the strength to pivot in the face of rejection or in the face of relationship that's not meant to be able to close one door and open another to new opportunities. What an important lesson for ourselves and our children. Thank you, Genesis. Shabbat Shalom.